Right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the quarterfinals of the JCSA High School Debating Competition 2023. Indeed, we were interrupted by the earthquake. Why don't we give earthquake names? I'd like to to address this disrespectful earthquake by its name. How dare it interrupt debaters? But as I said earlier to our debaters, we will defeat it with sound argumentation and rational reasoning. We will not be stopped. And so we're back here again for another day of debates to continue in this quarterfinal of the JCSA High Schools Debate Competition 2023. Of course, I am Ravon Matthews. You've been seeing me a lot. And with us, we have the Carteret College versus the Montego Bay High School for girls. This is a match that you didn't get to see on Monday because we were streaming instead Campion versus York Castle. But we've decided to make the best out of a bad situation and show you the other half of the debate that would have taken place. So, of course, we have the teams, as I would have mentioned before, the Carteret College in proposition, followed by the team Montego Bay High School for girls, who is in opposition. Indeed, we have two stalwarts of debating here. And we will be debating the motion, of course, the same one that we had before, which reads, this House believes that if trade unions gain majority of the workforce, they will provide more harm than good. This House believes that if trade unions gain a significant majority of the workforce, they will provide more good than harm, which means that the team in proposition will be arguing that trade unions provide good for the workplace, and them having the majority of the workplace is objectively a good thing. And of course, the team in opposition, Montego Bay High School for Girls, will be arguing the reverse, that trade unions will create more harm if they gain a significant majority of the workplace. And gentlemen, with all that said, let us jump right into the debates. At this point in time, we'll call the first speaker from the Carteret College to open up their presentation.
Good morning.
Good morning. We're hearing you loud and clear. The Carteret College, if you're speaking, I'm not currently hearing nor seeing you.
All right. Good morning again. Are you able to hear me?
I can hear you clearly. But
I'm sorry,
go ahead.
we fell off, currently our device fell off because we're having a bit of internet issues in our area. So if anything was stated regarding the match, we did not hear anything.
Okay. I was inviting the first speaker from the Carteret College to open up the case.
Oh, I'm so sorry, I did not.
That's quite fine. That's understandable.
Okay, so we'll begin.
Still not seeing your video though, DC.
Yes.
Ah, lovely. Ready when you are, Madam Speaker.
Okay, thank you. Chairman, esteemed judges, coaches, fellow debaters, members of the audience, good morning. Today, we are here to discuss the motion. If trade unions gain a significant majority of the workforce, it would create more good than harm. Opposition will come and present to you, starting out already creating a pessimistic atmosphere. Now you see why they're not in government or running the country. I stand before you to assert that trade unions, when they achieve substantial representation among workers in the working population, they indeed create more good than harm. Let us delve into this proposition with a focus on the principle of unity, societal benefits, and economic growth. As a first affirmative speaker, my job is to outline the role of my teammates, to define the mood, and also offer a comprehensive perspective on the motion. My second speaker will further explore the advantages associated with trade unions gaining substantial influence within the workforce, not only focusing on the impact in the workplace, but also furthering on what it has the impact in the daily lives of employers in terms of universal healthcare, paid leave, and unemployment benefits. While my third speaker will summarize our case and counter any opposing argument. The primary principle of trade unionism is unity or solidarity among workers, emphasizing the idea of one for all, all for one. This unity is vital for achieving workers' objectives. This means that trade unions should aim for 100% membership to maximize their organizational strength. A trade union's influence and power in its relations with employers depend on the proportion of unionized workers within a company. The greater the number of unionized workers in comparison to non-unionized workers, the stronger the union. The term workforce refers to the total number of individuals in a country or region who are physically able to work. Members of the audience, I must highlight that our stance is founded on the fact that at current, only 20% of the workforce is unionized. Considering Jamaica's lower enrollment of the union, we as a proposition will look at countries who had unions with higher influence within their workforce, such as Sweden, Denmark, and different states in the United States, in US, who had the majority being a trade union influence. To fully understand the motion, it is essential to define the term good. According to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, good means to be of favorable tendency or character. Let us examine the historical and contemporary evidence to support the idea that trade unions bring about favorable tendencies for workers and society as a whole. Throughout Jamaican history, trade unions have played a pivotal role in creating laws such as the Labor Relations and Industrial Disputes Act of 2006, which recognizes workers' rights to create and join trade unions. On December 15th of 2021, an article titled, "Unions are not only good for workers, they're good for communities and for democracy," was published by the Economic Policy Institute. The article explored the broader, often overlooked effects of trade unions on the daily lives of workers. The article argues that, like giving employees a voice at work, unions also empower workers to shape their communities. Regions with strong union presence tend to have more equitable economic structures, social systems, and democracies. Esteemed judges, this assertion is supported by empirical evidence from the United States, stating the 17 US states with the highest union densities in terms of income and economic protections a state minimum wages that were on average 19% higher than the national average and 40% higher than those in low union density states. Median annual incomes in these states were $6,000 higher than the national average. They had higher than average unemployment insurance recipiency rate. In terms of healthcare, these states had insured population 4.5 percentage points higher on average than low union density states. These states were more likely to have passed basic leaves and paid family and medical leave laws than states with lower union densities. The term union density is defined as the share of workers in the states who are represented by a union, including union members and other workers who are covered by a union contract. Members of the audience. This data shows that strong union representation in the workforce with multitude of economic and social benefits. To address the opposition's concern, let us examine the definition of harm as to damage or thing or person or make them less effective or successful than they were. Critics argue that when unions gain a significant majority, it can lead to higher labor costs for businesses, making them less competitive in the global markets. However, this notion lacks concrete evidence. We as the government argue that while labor costs can increase, this is not solely due to the presence of trade unions, but can be offset by improvements in the worker productivity, innovation, and overall job satisfaction. Furthermore, the fear that significant majority of unionized workers can lead to more frequent strikes and labor disruption is unfounded. Strikes are a last resort and can serve as a necessary tool for workers to advocate for their rights and better working conditions. History shows that when used judiciously, strikes can lead to mutually beneficial agreements that benefit both workers and employers. My fellow opposition, let us put aside our differences and recognize that we share the common goal of culminating a workforce that imparts change in the community. Do not be misguided with false truth, but instead reaffirm yourself with us that in order to do more good in the workforce, that unions must be given greater control. Let us recognize that the importance of trade unions in fostering positive changes for workers and their communities in communities. Stand with us in affirming this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the first speaker from the proposition, the Carteret College. We now invite the first speaker from the opposing team, Montego Bay High, to open the case for that side.
Are you hearing me clearly?
Indeed, indeed I am.
Okay. May I begin?
Yes, we'll start the time when you do.
Okay. Picture this. You have two stones, a smaller one in your right hand and a larger one in your left hand. The larger one is the economy, and the smaller one is a trade union as it is. For each union request to receive a stone is added to the right hand. The size of the stone varies by the size of the union. So here we have reduced working hours requested by just a minor fraction of the workforce. But here comes the majority of the workforce. And what do they want? Increased overtime pay, extended leave. Oh, the stone is getting heavier. We continue, and your right hand begins to sink. This is the strain we will put on the nation if this motion passes. And just like the economy will be unbalanced, the level of participation in the union will be too. The proposition errs when they speak on solidarity. With a large union, not everyone will have a voice because the voices are collective, so individual voices will go overlooked. Distinguished judges, esteemed audience, fellow opponents, and my team members, I extend a warm greeting to each of you. Today, the opposition takes the floor to critically examine the moot before us. This House believes that if trade unions gain a significant majority of the workforce, they will create more good than harm. We firmly assert that they will, in fact, cause more harm than good, and I will elaborate on the reasons for this position. In its essence, a trade union is an organized collective of workers within a specific industrial company established with the noble intention of representing and advocating for their shared interests and rights. While this is undoubtedly a commendable initiative, we contend that when trade unions amass a significant majority of the workforce, it can disrupt economies of scale and lead to economic downturn. In the Caribbean, where many economies heavily depend on industries such as tourism, agriculture, and manufacturing, trade unions may at times push for wage increases and benefits that result in significantly higher labor costs for businesses. It is crucial for us to consider the financial implications of such actions. When trade unions advocate for better pay and improved working conditions, the costs associated with these improvements inevitably need to be considered. This burden typically falls on the employer, who in turn must raise the prices of goods and services. The result, any cost advantages previously enjoyed by employers will diminish. No, the proposition may erroneously suggest that the losses incurred by employers have no direct correlation with the harm caused by the trade unions with a majority of the workforce. However, the opposition is here to demonstrate how closely intertwined these two factors are. The opposition sees the potential downsides of trade union dominance, emphasizing that while well-intentioned, their actions may ultimately have adverse effects on both businesses and citizens. The consequence is that businesses may respond by reducing their workforce, retaining only specialized and long-term employees to maintain profitability. This phenomenon, which has been observed in the real world, is particularly evident during economic downturns, such as the recent pandemic, which resulted in economic recession. Extensive research demonstrates that job displacements lead to prolonged earning losses, less stable employment, adverse health outcomes, and other negative consequences for affected workers. Consequently, when a company experiences an 8% loss in earnings due to trade union influence, approximately 2.8 of its workforce suffer the very same consequences. The resulting labor expenses can make it challenging for businesses to remain competitive. The consequences of job displacement extend beyond the individual workers and affect the entire country. Increased employment rates put strain on social support systems and have broader implications for the nation's economic health. In a utopian setting, trade unions with a majority of the workforce might advocate for various needs without detrimental consequences. However, in reality, businesses often prioritize their interests. So even when measures are put in place to safeguard workers from wrongful termination, economies of scale will lead to cost-cutting measures and harm the very workers the union aims to protect. Now, learned audience, it is essential to consider not only the job loss this will cause, but the inflationary pressures the region will face. A majority of the workforce in trade unions enhance their collective bargaining power and potential for change. But the real question is whether this benefits the society as a whole. For example, when trade unions effectively secure significant wage increase, it can set inflationary pressures within the region. As a case in point, where a major union successfully negotiates a substantial wage hike for its members. This drives up labor costs for participating business, which in turn leads to increased goods and services, resulting in inflationary pressure and adverse effects on the consumers. This link between trade unions securing wage increase and inflation is rooted in basic economic principles. When wages rise significantly without a corresponding increase in productivity or without productive improvements, businesses pass the higher cost onto consumers in the form of increased prices. This sets off a chain reaction where the cost of living becomes more burdensome for the general public. As a result, inflation erodes the real the real value of money and makes it more challenging for individuals to maintain their standard of living. Now, this underscores the harm that this motion will cause if it is passed. To demonstrate the prevailing imbalance of harm versus good, the opposition has elected to highlight the most substantial advantages that the proposition can come with. For example, equitable wages, improved working conditions, and empowerment of collective bargaining. This, in contrast, we must address the looming adverse consequences: economic disarray, escalated labor expenditures, workforce reduction, and the inescapable surge in consumer prices. I implore you, do not be beguiled by the idealistic visions propagated by the proponents of this motion. Our present state of affairs inherently embodies a compelling rationale for refraining from endorsing it, granting a formidable amalgamation of workers sway in the economic disruptive transformation in our established societal structure, jeopardizing the enduring economic stability we have come to expect. I thank you.
Thank you very much for that. We now invite the second speaker from the Carteret College to take the stand.
Coming together is a beginning. Keeping together is perfect. Working together is perfect. And recording. Honorable Chairman, distinguished judges, my fellow teammates, humble opponents, and spectators, good morning. As the second speaker of the proposition, I firmly propose the notion that this House believes that if trade unions gain a significant majority of the workforce, they will create more good than harm. To address the fallacy stated by the opposition in regards to labor costs, the labor revenue to ratio is an economic metric used to measure the percentage of revenue generated that is spent on a payroll for employees. Firm-dependent factors prevent us from making general statements as to the average ratio. But economic principles suggest that employers should try to keep their labor costs within 15 to 30% of gross revenue. Assuming that trade unions will negotiate for every single employee in the company, regardless of membership, using our aforementioned metric of a 20% increase in wages, thanks to the union, new recommended ratio would be 18% to 36% on the high end. This results in a 6% in labor cost increase. While sizable, it is far from the economic shattering labor costs that you, the opposition, seem to believe would be incurred. Now, I will begin by stating that according to an extract by Neathouse Partners, trade unions represent the interests of workers, aiming to safeguard their rights and improve their working conditions, wages, and job security. Our position is based on the fact that workers who join a trade union are more likely to have better terms and conditions than those who do not, as trade unions negotiate for their members through collective bargaining agreements. This protects them from bad management practices. Individual workers on their own just cannot match the power of the employer, because the employer has the ability to fire workers, and without a union, the employer can cut pay, eliminate benefits, change working conditions, and just fire them for no reason. There are two levels of collective bargaining in relation to pay: wage formation and other working conditions. This is at a national level and at a local level. However, both levels have a supplementary relation, because as noted, industry-wide agreements provide leeway for company agreements on differentiation and individualization of wages. In this way, parts of the centrally agreed wage increase are distributed at a local level. Trade unions having more of the workforce would give them more bargaining power, and decisions taken by the trade union on behalf of its members would have to be respected by the employer and adhered to. However, sadly, only 20% of the workforce is impacted by the trade union. As Helen Keller once said, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. Ladies and gentlemen, imagine a world where trade unions hold a significant majority in the workforce. In this realm, the scales tip towards fair wages, improved working conditions, and a collective voice for workers. It is a landscape where the pursuit of common good outweighs individual interest, fostering a harmonious and empowered labor force. We can learn so much more about where we are and what directions we might take by comparisons with other systems. The comparison here is between Sweden and the United States of America. One key finding is that overall union density in Sweden currently stands at 69%, nearly 7 times the 10% reported for the USA by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. In the Swedish system, all employees of a company are covered by collective agreement, regardless of whether or not they are union members, once the company is a member of an employer association. In other words, Swedish employers play a crucial role in upholding collective bargaining coverage. Hence, for sectorial bargaining to be sustainable, organizing must be seen as beneficial by employers, not only employees. Whereas in the United States, the majority of union exclusive representative for purposes of negotiating collective agreement, and the employers prohibited by law from negotiating anyone other than the majority union on matters regarding rates of pay, wages, hours of employment, and healthcare for the employee is their full responsibility. In a publication by the Economic Policy Institute, we find that states with the highest union density have ensured population lower on average than that of a low union density state. They have all elected to expand Medicaid under Affordable Care Act and are more likely to have passed paid sick leave laws and paid family and medical leave laws than states with lower union densities. Furthermore, joining trade unions empowers individuals, providing a collective voice that amplifies demands for fair wages, improved working conditions, and job security. Unions work on the simple principle that while an employer might be able to ignore the views of a single worker, if all workers speak with one voice, an employer has to take notice. It is not just about personal gain. It is about shaping a workplace that is better for everyone. We must also consider the fact that trade unions are the backbone in this our working economy. To my fellow opponents, I ask, who will advocate on the workers' behalf if not for the trade unions? Who will ensure that people of the working class are not marginalized if not for our trade unions? Think of trade unions as the architects of a sturdy bridge. Each worker is a vital support beam, and the union acts as a framework that binds them together, creating a structure strong enough to withstand the challenges of the work environment. So imagine a world where the framework is absent or only holding a few beams up. The bridge over time would collapse. That is why we believe that if trade unions gain a significant majority of the workforce, there will be more good than harm. I thank you.
Thank you very much for that submission from the second speaker from the Carteret College. We now invite the second speaker from the Montego Bay High School for Girls to extend the case for the side opposition.
Here. Shall I start?
Indeed, when you're ready.
Your second speaker does not understand economic principles. She wishes to inaccurately simplify the meticulous framing of the Jamaican economy by saying there will be no effect on labor costs. Blasphemy. Allow me to explain through my speech the fallacies and implications of their arguments. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed judges and respected adversaries, allow me to express our position clearly. The notion that trade unions, when amassing a significant majority within the workforce, does create more harm than good. The proposition misunderstands rather. The opposition indeed acknowledges the positive impacts and benefits of trade unions that they have had on securing workers' rights globally. But we implore a more careful consideration of balance and broader implications. See beyond the immediate promises they have amplified to you. The opposition's argument centers on the approach for balance. Yes, empower workers, but not at the expense of economic stagnation, market viability, business flexibility, or accountability. We advocate for finding a middle ground that weighs the positive impacts against the economic and social consequences you have disregarded of empowering unions excessively. The proposition has vaguely targeted this point. However, it is imperative to recognize that an excessive concentration of power in trade unions can stifle innovation and lead to rigid labor markets. In today's rapid evolving global economy, flexibility is key. The paradox is evident. Trade unions, when given significant control, inadvertently impede the significant adjustments that businesses urgently need to prosper. This obstruction leads to diminished job stability that they advocate for and acts as a significant impediment to our economic advancement. I am confident the proposition can concur that this is a contradiction that clashes with the trade union and what they aim to summon to do. It hinders progress instead of facilitating it. Moreover, the proposition has completely overlooked the big bad issue of inflation whilst initiating their proposal. So the opposition will staunchly carry out the burden for you. Inflation is the general increase in prices and the fall in purchases of values of money. It affects every aspect of our economy and society, as said as our first speaker. Giving trade unions a significant majority would result in negotiations for higher prices. While this might seem like a victory for the workers initially, a substantial increase in wages across board can lead to what economists call a wage price inflation. When businesses are forced to pay higher wages, they often pass these costs onto the consumers in the form of higher prices of goods and services. The outcome? Inflation, of course. This negatively affects the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Tourism. If the cost of goods are higher, no one will buy. If the locals cannot afford, they migrate. If the locals are migrating, we certainly will not look attractive to tourists. Consider the broader ramifications. These inflated costs directly impact labor expenses. Picture a scenario where heightened union demands lead to increased wages and benefits. Superficially advantageous, yet in the fiercely competitive global market, even a marginal uptick in labor costs can significantly erode our appeal to budget-conscious travelers, consumers, and investors alike. If our prices surge due to amplified labor expenses, we jeopardize our competitive standing, putting our businesses at a distinct disadvantage in the international arena. Additionally, excessive union control can lead to an environment of hostility and division. While the original purpose is to protect workers' rights, an excessive concentration of power often leads to confrontational attitude, between labor and management. This hostility can result in strikes and labor disputes, disrupting not only the affected industries, but also the broader economy. The opposition suggestion, however, allows for collaborative workplaces where management and employees work together for mutual benefit, fostering a more positive and productive environment. Excessive union power, on the other hand, can erode this collaborative spirit. How is this so? In the current RGRJ Gleaner, the Donald Anderson poll conducted among a sample of more than 1,300 employed Jamaicans, the majority of respondents have given a failing grade for the economic conditions. That is, 63% of those interviewed said that the current economic conditions are bad. 63% of employees who reject and refuse the permitting of trade unions to gain a significant majority of the workforce due to their current economic outlook and the economic damages that this proposal presupposes. And this rejection and refusal may appear in the form of, yes, strikes and labor disputes. Furthermore, the Jamaican economy grew by an estimated 4.3% in 2001, driven by a partial rebound in tourism and related services and expansion of production and distribution activities. However, this recovery from an extremely low 2022 baseline owing to closures in responses to coronavirus pandemic. Judges, the proposition presupposes that trade unions gaining a significant majority in the workforce would do more good than harm to the current economy. This is the same economy that fumbled at the first wave of the pandemic. Furthermore, the propositions completely ignore the importance of sector-specific solutions. Industries have different labor requirements. What works for one industry might not work for the other. By tailoring regulation to specific sectors, we can ensure that our economy remains diversified and resilient, catering to the unique needs of each sector. While we understand the proposition's emphasis on job security and fair wages, let's not forget that a balanced approach can achieve these goals. Strengthening labor laws, encouraging dialogue, and etc. can encourage education and are viable alternatives. These solutions enhance worker skills and enjoyability that will result in more good than harm than what you have just pre-proposed to us. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, it is crucial to acknowledge the potential harm that can arise. The issue of inflation, hostile work environments, and the absence of sector-specific considerations. These are just a few of the many concerns that can arise from significant union power in the proposition status quo. Let us not dismiss these concerns for the sake of an appealing rhetoric. It is the opposition's firm belief that the dangers of handing trade unions a significant majority of the workforce far outweigh the perceived advantages. Therefore, we enforce a more collaboration between worker and labor management.
Thank you very much. To the second speaker from Montego Bay High School, we now turn over to the third speaker to present the last substantive case for the team, the Carteret College. DC, I'm not hearing you.
Are you hearing me?
I'm hearing you now.
Honorable Chairman, distinguished judges, esteemed coaches, treasured teammates, and my unyielding opponents. Now, I'd like to address the opposition's concerns since they are unwilling to address our points of information. You mentioned the effect of unions on economies of scale. Now, I believe you meant diseconomies of scale, but most diseconomies of scale have no relation to the involvement of unions. In fact, one of the most widespread diseconomies, the loss of managerial control, would become less problematic if the union was to serve as a mediatory body. The opposition continues to name drop economic terms, but not once have they actually applied them. Now, moving on to my substance. As the third proposition speaker, I'll prove indisputably, unquestionably, and all but certainly that the substantial involvement of trade unions will infuse the workforce with the spirit of moral benevolence, voluntary engagement, and administrative cohesiveness. Imagine a world where workplaces become a well-oiled machine of empathy, cooperation, and commitment, a world sculpted by the profound influence of trade unions. Trade unions achieving majority representation in the workforce can be mutually beneficial for the employee, employer, and union. Of course, it increases the union's influence, which allows them to better negotiate on behalf of workers. And with a larger membership base, unions can levy their which to have a more significant impact on shaping workplace policies, securing better wages and benefits, and advocating for better working conditions. This in turn boosts the union's attractiveness for prospective members. Additionally, as the voice for most of the workforce, trade unions can extend their reach in advocating for broader labor rights and social justice issues, amplifying their role in shaping a fair and more equitable society. Now, such widespread union integration is also likely to decrease the prevalence of corrupt business practices and increase the efficacy of whistleblowing. According to David Lewis, as cited in the Journal of Business Ethics, the two primary reasons why people refuse to report wrongdoings are the perception that the wrongdoing will be corrected and the fear of retaliation. Should the union represent a majority of the workforce, they will have the capacity to effectively tackle this problem and guarantee protection for those who come forward with such concern. Trade unions can be the catalyst to creating a safer and stronger Jamaica. And in an age marked by unprecedented social transformation, it's high time we abandon the hierarchical system of subordinates being at the beck and call of their superiors. This era of profound inclusivity demands that all social sectors look towards bridging the gap between the leaders and the front line. Trade unions are dedicated to ensuring that the common man has a seat at the table. And if they become a majority of the workforce, we can throw the table out the window, granting every employee the chance to express their views, thereby fostering intellectual diversity. This will result in increased employee commitment, and as suggested by an article by James Malcolmson, this promotes risk aversion and decreases staff turnover. This also equips employers with the insights necessary to make the best decisions that cater to the needs of their employees and their customers. By prioritizing the well-being of employees, you can enhance the quality of life for employers. If a majority of the workforce is represented by unions, it would lead to widespread skill development as more individuals can take advantage of the various training and development programs these unions offer to their members. This, in turn, would boost employee productivity, resulting in increased company efficiency increased company efficiency, improved stability in labor management relations would also foster greater compliance with labor laws among workers, creating a harmonious and effective workforce. When trade unions become integrated into businesses, they are more likely to work with employers to guarantee employee job security. This collaboration grants Jamaican business owners access to the collective knowledge of trade unions, enhancing their adaptability and making them more competitive within the economy. And of course, research from the Norwegian Institute of Science and Technology reveals that increased market competition is intrinsically linked to sustainable development. If trade unions can ensure equal opportunities for all businesses, Jamaica's economy has the potential to reach never-seen-before heights. Our motto, out of many one people, speaks to the diversity of Jamaica's population, which is teeming with intelligent and diligent and innovative public servants, eager to express their views for the betterment of themselves and their nation. And if trade unions become a significant part of the workforce, the melting pot will get so much sweeter. Thank you. The proposition momentarily rests its case.
Thank you so much for that. At this point in time, we invite the third speaker from Montego Bay to present the last substantive case for the side opposition.
The proposition would prefer to completely destroy the very economy which workers need to survive simply because of historical significance. Your first speaker stated that strikes do not affect the economy. What blasphemy she propounds. Mr. Speaker, the proposition is misguided and without evidence. Are we to simply sit back and ignore the fact that foreign investors are discouraged and stop investing when there are that many disruptions? Look at the effect of these quote-unquote significant majority trade unions on our society. Look at the North and South Gully project in St. James, the disaster which occurred due to this same excessive union control. Your third speaker so confidently, yet evidently inaccurately mentioned this economies of scale. He seems to be confused, judges, by economic policies, as these economies of scale occur in the long run, a socio-economic principle which affects businesses and economies in the long run, which of course proves that our stance is correct. Can we take a look at inflation, which has already skyrocketed? Do we really wish to make this worse by handing unions a significant majority? They do not understand the economic principles which affect our society side proposition. Mr. Speaker, the proposition's policy is littered with potholes and fallacies. Your speaker also inaccurately posited that it will not affect labor costs or labor market. Madam Proposition, might I ask where your sources are from? Your points lack standing and are merely formed from personal opinion and no statistics. Look at the failure of the United Kingdom, the failure of Greece, the failure of France, the failure of Italy, the failure of Ireland. Mr. Speaker, side proposition wishes to bring this failure here to Jamaica. The opposition therefore firmly believes that granting trade unions a majority of the workforce would result in more harm than good. The first speaker from the opposition emphasized the potential economic damage this could cause. We must not ignore, Mr. Speaker, the recurring issue of economic stability. The opposition contends that significant union power can lead to inflationary pressures, destabilizing our economy and eroding the purchasing power of our currency. The Minister of Finance, tasked with upholding economic stability, cannot overlook the potential ramifications of such a policy shift. Inflation, once unleashed, is difficult to contain, and its effects trickle down, impacting every citizen. The second opposition speaker focused on applying the mood to the current status quo. The proposition fails to grasp that businesses need the freedom to adapt, innovate, and optimize their operations according to market demands. The imposition of rigid regulations through significant union control will hinder this adaptability, leading to inefficiencies, decreased productivity, and potential job losses. We cannot sacrifice our economic dynamism for the sake of uniformity. There must be a balance, which side opposition upholds. Allow me to highlight the potential disparities in representation that might arise if the majority of the workforce were to join a trade union. In the Caribbean, trade unions often prioritize the interests of their members. Unfortunately, this sometimes leads to tensions between unionized and non-unionized workers. Non-union workers and the unemployed may feel marginalized or excluded from the benefits
and protections negotiated by said unions. It is important to recognize, Mr. Speaker, that not everyone can become a member of a trade union. This raises the critical question: what happens to the minority that is left out? The proposition judges will choose to mandate a system of oppression and disparity, which goes against the very nature of trade unions as seen in the 1930s riots. They wish to worsen and silence the individual voices of the populace. They wish to remove the vox populi, leading a union which silences their members. The opposition contends that overlooking this minority is not just an ethical concern, but also a potential source of social unrest. In a scenario where trade unions wield significant control, those not included face a stark reality. They lack the protective shield that union membership offers. This absence of representation proposition will lead to a disparity in workers' rights, ultimately clashing with the Trade Unions Act and creating a divided workforce, where the privileged few enjoy the benefits of collective bargaining, while the rest are left vulnerable to exploitation and unfair labor practices, as my first speaker had so rightfully mentioned. This, in turn, results in the trade unions becoming the very thing they seek to surmount: lack of unity and lack of empowerment. What then does the proposition try to convince us, Mr. Speaker, to join hands and hearts to a system which prioritizes a privileged few? There are an array of countries which have implemented this significant majority trade union influence, which the proposition speaks so much of, as I mentioned in my speech. In conclusion, individual bargaining, limited collective voice, job insecurity, limited access to union benefits, less involvement in decision making. The opposition maintains that a balanced approach is the need of the hour. For this reason, the opposition has won. I rest my case.
Thank you so much for that. At this point in time, we're going to take a 1-minute recess to allow the finishing touches to be put on those reply speeches, after which we'll invite the opposition reply speaker to close out the debate for the side opposition. Right, that has been 1 minute elapsed. We now invite the reply speaker from the team Montego Bay High to close out the debate for the side opposition.
It is evident that with the majority of the workforce being in a trade union, there will be more harm than good. The opposition is here to counter each so-called advantage the proposition came with. Firstly, yes, the trade unions have contributed to improve labor conditions. However, they demand excessive concessions from employers, leading to layoffs or financial strain on businesses, particularly in the Caribbean, where tourism and agricultural sectors are left behind. This is a negative impact on the overall employment. Two, trade unions can reduce income inequality for their members. They inadvertently exacerbate inequality by focusing on certain industries or sectors, leaving non-unionized workers behind. This creates a divide between union and non-union employees, leading to social tensions. Three, while worker empowerment is a goal of trade unions, their influence sometimes stifle individual employee voices and discourage personal initiative. In some cases, this has led to a lack of productivity and innovation in the workplace. workplace. 4, while trade unions may advocate for social safety nets, they can place a heavy financial burden on governments and employers. The cost of providing extensive social benefits can lead to higher taxes and reduce competitiveness in the Caribbean. Even if we ignore all the reasonable disadvantages presented, we cannot ignore the fact that with a majority of the workforce, trade unions can become too powerful and engage in rent-seeking behavior, demanding more than is reasonable and affecting the viability of industries. This can lead to unintended harm, including layoffs or industry closures. Therefore, learned audience, why should we stand aside and watch as the proposition purports a motion that is detrimental to you, your family, the community, your job, and the nation as a whole? Consider all that has been said before. With this, the opposition rests.
Here, here.
Thank you for that. We now invite the reply speaker from the team, the Carteret College, to conclude this debate.
Good afternoon. Good morning. The opposition is adamant that we have misspoken, misunderstood, and misinterpreted, but they have yet to provide any information to support these claims while failing to acknowledge us and misquoting us repeatedly. You have refused to acknowledge our desire for an engaged discussion, which further exemplifies the opposition's negative disposition. We've proven that the economic burden of union involvement is minuscule, yet you continue to blow it out of the water. You even admitted yourself that most of the economies of scale issues are short-term problems that could be easily remediated by a mediary body, which is a trade union. Now, as the reply speaker, I will redefine what the opposition has forgot and has the meaning of workforce is a total number of individuals in a country or region who are physically able to work and not only centers on the company. Now, just to really hammer home our point, I'd like to provide an anecdote about about Denmark, the country with the third highest union representation in the world. Now, Denmark at a union density of 70% has reported that the average Danish household has a wealth of 1.3 million krona, making them the highest in the European Union. But Denmark is also ninth highest in terms of gross domestic product, but per capita. So going back to your stone analogy, this hand is full and this hand is full, so what gives? You might say, is Denmark some sort of resource giant that can afford to give their citizens ludicrous amounts of money? No, Denmark's largest industries are service, trading, and manufacturing. But in 1998, the Danish Confederation of Trade Unions was formed, and in a 3-month lockout from the Danish employer. Okay. In an attempt to reconsolidate power, the Danish employers would establish the Danish Employers Association. And in 1899, they locked out 2/3 of the Danish trade unions members in an attempt to kill the fledgling union in its cradles. The following 3 months would go down in Danish history as the Hunger War, which saw the nation ravaged by poverty with record high rates of starvation and child mortality. Eventually, the LO would gain the support of most of the population, and the DA was forced into negotiations. The negotiation resulted in the main agreements that the Denmark labor force is built on today. This said that the employer's right to lead and distribute work the agreement stated that the employer's right to lead and distribute work. In return, the employers recognize collective agreements as the basis of any regulation of wages and working conditions within the Danish labor market. So how's life in Denmark been since? Modern Denmark has record low numbers of corruption, scoring 90% on the Corruption Perception Index, more than twice that of Jamaica's 43%. Their comprehensive social welfare system offers unemployment, disability, old age, and survivorship benefits at virtually no charge to all Danes. They have free universal healthcare, free education, low crime rates, and on average, they work less than 40 hours a week. And guess what? The cost of living in Denmark is actually quite high, and Denmark has the highest average taxation in the EU. But their citizens are still able to retain more wealth than any other European nation because the decision makers are in tune with the means and the needs of the people, and they've been able to collaborate and create a system where no man is left behind. And that is the power of the trade union. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that closing reply speech. At this point in time, we are going to excuse ourselves, the judges, of course, to a breakout room to have our deliberations. We encourage you during that time to unmute your mics and talk about what happened in the debate and have some conversations. But in the interim, we will excuse ourselves. Judges, we're heading over to room 3.
Hey, Montego Bay, how's it going?
Hold on, sir. You were talking to us. It kind of breaking up.
Just saying hi.
Oh, hey, hey. Hi.
Really strong delivery from you guys.
Hi, everyone.
Really good delivery.
Enjoy the second speaker's delivery.
Yes.
Good job, guys.
Good job
Did
to
you
you.
guys hear us there?
Oh, we're not
You guys
hearing.
hear us?
Yeah, we're hearing, but it's a bit like
Muffled.
muffled.
Okay.
Yeah. But we were saying that we had a good debate. You guys were really good.
Yeah, you guys too.
Yeah.
Same to you.
Can you hear me?
The next one session.
Yes, it does.
It's good.
Yeah. Hold on. Oh, hold on. We're kind of delayed. I feel like it's our Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Yeah, same. Like we're having a lot of internet
Issues.
issues.
Yeah.
Not a night.
Same. We fell off a
Yeah,
couple
there's a bit delayed.
times, and we had to get another place and get another Wi-Fi.
You have to have TV lights.
Yeah,
Kimberly.
Oh, Kimberly.
Hi, Kimberly.
This is Kimberly.
Hi, Kimberly.
Oh.
We're twins, man. Yeah.
Hmm. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Can we confirm that we have the DeCarteret College and the Montego Bay High School for girls here?
Yes, we're here, sir.
I see
We're
these.
here, sir.
And I see. Mobe, are you here with us, Mobe? Oh, let me
Yes, we are. We're on. We're on.
Okay, lovely, lovely. All right, so as you can see, guys, it was an intense deliberation. I won't keep you guys waiting too long for the results, the answer. We've concluded the judges by unanimous decision that the winner of this match and the team that will be advanced into the semifinals of the JCSA debate competition 2023 is Montego Bay High School, the team opposition. Congratulations, Montego Bay High School.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will say that this was an extremely close decision, and I'm going to say it here. When I say it, I mean it. Every time I see the Carteret College debate, the Carteret College becomes better. This, in my estimation, is the best debate that I've seen the Carteret College competing. And I think the Carteret College, even as you don't advance, you should be very proud of that fact. And if I remember, you're new to this format of debating, right? And I know for sure that if you continue working in the way that you are, that you're going to become a force to reckon with. Because I believe that every single time I say it again, every single time I say DC debate, DC gets better. So congratulations. So let's go through why it is that we saw Montego Bay High won the debate, right? First off, we saw the government speaker did an excellent job in establishing a kind of baseline for what it is that we're debating here. They explained to us, one, why it is that a stronger union, a union with greater membership, is a stronger union. That linkage between more membership and a stronger union, I think it did a good job in establishing that fact. We could assume it by virtue of how a union works, but I like the fact that you went the extra step to show us that linkage. And after showing us that linkage between how a significant portion of the workforce needs a stronger union, he then went on to tell us why it is that we need a strong union. He talked about the examples of union-dense states that have higher incomes, better healthcare, low employment, a lot of benefits. You say union-shaped communities. And what I particularly like from the first speaker is that you preempted the argument correctly that opposition is going to say that unions cause higher business costs and bad economic outcomes. And you preempted that argument, and he gave a rebuttal for that argument, saying that labor costs can be offset by innovation, productivity, and satisfaction. I think that was excellent foresight on the part of the Carteret College to preempt that argument from Montego Bay High School. However, in as much as Montego Bay High School did bring the argument, and that was the crux of their case, and they established it greatly and showed why it is that a stronger union is going to lead to these negative outcomes. You needed to have taken that preemptive analysis, that idea that it will be offset by innovation and productivity, and now prove to me that that is the case. Because just saying that innovation and productivity will mitigate against these bad economic costs gives you some points in my book. But then when Montego Bay High comes and hedges their case on it and shows us all the harms, it was your burden now to come back to that point and show, no, this will not be the case because productivity will help because of X, Y, Z. Innovation will help to mitigate this problem because of X, Y, Z. I think the third speaker did a very good job of saying that Montego Bay High is blowing this economic downturn out of the water. That is what needed to have happened earlier on in the debate. Because here's what happens. You hedge your foundation on the benefits of collective bargaining and the improvements that trade unions provide. And Montego Bay hedges their argument against the bad economic outcomes that can happen. Objectively, But when I weigh these two arguments, it doesn't matter if we get high workplace benefits for a short period of time at the end of the union work, collective bargaining, and all the great stuff that union does. If it is at the end of the day in a long-term sustainable measure, it's going to lead to negative outcomes. So when I weigh those two arguments by themselves, then the idea that we have bad economic turmoil outweighs the benefit, the long-term bad economic outcome outweighs the benefit of the short-term benefits that we get from collective bargaining. Your job now was DC, was to say that, no, we get the benefit from collective bargaining, and this is objectively a good and great thing, but the benefits, that the harm that they're claiming from economic outcomes will not be one that we see. We got that in the reply speech from the Carteret College. And at that point in time, the adjudicators felt like the team from Montego Bay High wouldn't have had the opportunity to respond to that. So again, a reply speech is one that replies to the crux of the case, things that were already said. We strongly advise against bringing new ideas into a reply speech. How the Montego Bay High School reply speaker did it, where they summarized all of their points. They told us about the destruction of individuality, the heavy burden, the more tax competitive, the income equality. They summarized everything that happened in their case, and then told us why this matters more than what happens on your side. The Carteret College, what you did in your reply speech was provide to me what might have been the winning argument. But in as much reply speeches aren't necessarily for providing winning arguments, but to prove that the arguments that came out earlier on in the debate are superior to the other person's arguments, we couldn't have credited that very much. We heard from the reply speaker from the Carteret College this excellent case study on Denmark. They tell us that Denmark isn't some international superpower that was blessed by God to have founded their country on a repository of oil or coal or any such mineral. Their greatest asset is their human resources, a service-based industry, right? So Denmark and Jamaica are more comparative than one might think. And he gave us an excellent analysis of how the government tried to stifle and destroy trade unions and how the people suffered through hunger, through famine and all of that. But at the end of the day, the trade unions won out. And what is the result? Denmark is awesome. The benefits are healthcare, the crime is low, it's an excellent workplace. And even the idea that this comes with more taxation, the citizens are happy to pay that taxation because of the benefits that came from Denmark. I thought that case study was an excellent way of undermining significantly Montego Bay High's claim that a powerful trade union movement will destroy a country. But again, that needed to have come out earlier on in the debate, because Montego Bay High in the reply speech would not have gotten the opportunity to respond to that kind of argumentation. Even the analysis that you brought back that says, you say a stone in this hand and a stone in this hand, and it seems to me that everything's working out fine again. I know I harp on this because this might have been the winning argument in the debate that came out in the reply speech. From Montego Bay High, of course, we got an excellent analysis on how it will harm the economy. It shows the linkage between bad economies and trade unions, reducing the workforce to only long-term and specialized individuals, how it exacerbates the conditions in a pandemic, how it forces businesses to be inflexible and hard-lined by the bureaucratic red tape and pressures from the trade unions, and how that objectively leads to a bad outcome. The Carteret College told us that we're not going to increase the rates by so much, just a 6%, in as much as companies only spend 30% of their revenue on staff. Another 6% won't kill them. But Montego Bay came and said, any inflation, any marginal uptick will erode the attractiveness of Jamaica in the local and international market. That 6% is a significant percentage. And we didn't hear a rebuttal to that argument that 6%, that marginal uptick, is something that can cause, is something that is worthwhile, that is detrimental. We never heard any contention on that argument from the side of DC. We heard as well that the idea of inflation and the tension between unionized and non-unionized members from Montego Bay, the social unrest, the silencing of the voice. Indeed, we thought these were excellent arguments that came out from Montego Bay High School for girls, but indeed we were particularly impressed with your analysis of the inflationary pressures and the economic downturn, the migration and its impact on tourism, and all that, the stifling of innovation and the rigidness of the markets and all of those economic ideas that Montego Bay High School posited to us. And we thought indeed that that was an excellent job from Montego Bay High. So I've spoken a lot, and I hope that these justifications that we provided to you help you to understand how you can continue doing well for Montego Bay High and do even a little better at the Carteret College, how you can improve and continue to prove going forward. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say, as Chantal said in the chat, I'm very proud of both teams. It brings me joy to see our high schoolers debating at such a competent level, comparable to the collegiate level of debating. And I look forward to see what both teams have to offer in this competition and other competitions that Jade will be having. So with that said, we now conclude the quarterfinals of the JCSA High School Debating Championships 2023. Congratulations.
I just want to say thank you to Dick Carteret for an awesome match. You really gave us a run for our money. We were here scrambling and we were saying, okay, we need to do this, we need to do this. So really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. We had a great time.
Awesome. And the best debater for this round is the first speaker from the Montego Bay High School for Girls. Congratulations. We were particularly impressed with your first speech and, of course, your reply speech. I thought it was a lovely, lovely reply speech.
Thank you very much.
Right. So with that said, we now conclude the quarterfinals of the JCSA 2023 Debating Championships. We look forward to seeing you for the semifinals. Look forward to the match fixtures. Let us see who will win this championship. Thank you. Thank you all.